Hello, everybody. Good morning for all of you following us from California, and good afternoon for everybody in Italy. This is Monica Larner. I am the Italian reviewer for the Wine Advocate, and every week or so I try to do an Instagram live with an Italian producer so we can talk a little bit about Italian wine and some of the most exciting trends and topics that we have in Italian wine. And today I am to be joined by a wonderful woman, Virginie Saverys. She is the owner of the Avignonesi estate. Here she is. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi,
Hi,
Monica.
good afternoon. How are you?
We seem to have some
Can
sound
you?
issues.
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you now. Let's see.
Okay, well,
If we're quiet, maybe it'll come back. You look lovely. I am very pleased to speak with you. And it's been, I took a break from doing some of these Instagram lives after the holiday. So I'm anxious to start up again. And I'm quite excited to start with you because there's a
that's very kind of you.
lot to discuss. And also you bring us into the heart of Tuscany, to one of the most beautiful areas in the world for winemaking, between Cortona and Montepulciano, where the hills are very rolling and soft, and there's the iconic cypress trees, and your estate is there. So I wanted to ask you a little bit, if you could tell us first a little bit about the history, the important history of Avignonesi, and then also segue into how you became owner by 2009, I believe, and what your own personal journey was to be part of this estate.
Well, the Avignonesi family is a noble family from Montepulciano, who dates back to many centuries. And they used to produce their Vinsanto under their brand name, which at that time wasn't really sold. It was for family use for special occasions. But then in 1974, because the rest of the grapes were sold to the Cantina Sociale, so the cooperative, in 1974, Ettore Falvo, who married Adriana Avignonesi, and he owned vineyards in Cortona, decided and agreed with his father-in-law to create the brand Avignonesi as such, of producers of fine wines in Montepulciano and Cortona. And that's how it all started. As happens in even very good families, after a number of years, the brothers didn't agree, and I was asked if I could take over some shares in the company. So I started with a minority interest in 2007. And then in 2009, I ended up owning Avignonesi 100%, which, coming back from an entirely different background, was quite an adventure. Spent time back on the university and college desks with learned professors from Bordeaux mainly. Also a biodynamic course in Burgundy with the famous Pierre Masson, who passed away a few years ago. And so suddenly my life took an entirely different take, from being in the shipping profession, transporting goods from all over the world, bulk goods, to living the country life in Tuscany. And I must say it's been an extraordinary challenge, but as well a very interesting and fulfilling one.
It's quite a
Because,
jump, because you, as you said, you come from a shipping background, which is movement, high energy, a lot of moving pieces, very complicated, to a incredibly idyllic, serene part of Italy where things are slow. Winemaking you know, a work of passion, especially when you work with something like a Vinsanto, you know, it requires years and years of patience. So was wine something that you were interested in previously, or how did those first shares come into your heart?
Well, you may or may not know that Belgians are a country of great wine lovers, and it's one of the few countries where almost everyone cellars more than 1,000 bottles at home, which is not the case in most places in the world because people don't have the space to have that. And it's just a passion. And I grew up in one of those families where wine was an important part of our life. Well, I grew up, my first wine I drank, I was 6 years old, which for Americans is probably a crime. You go to jail for that. It's illegal. But it was just a little sip. It was when I did my first communion. And it was VCC, Vieux Château Certain, because that's what we grew up with. As a matter of fact, when we were drinking VCC, which was very often, sometimes my mother said, I don't know if you are familiar with Asterix and Obelix, the
of course,
French
yes.
cartoon, yeah?
Right.
And Obelix, no, Asterix can't have, no, Obelix can't have any of the magic potion because he fell in it when he was small. So my father only said to my mother, "No, you can't have any more because you fell in the pot when you were little. So let's stop that." So VCC was our house wine, and I always had a very good nose. As a matter of fact, I'm tremendously sensitive to Brettanomyces and to TCA, and often my father would serve a wine. I said, "Dad, can't drink that." So I had a sense and an interest. As a matter of fact, my father tried to buy some wineries in Bordeaux just before the big rise for an insurance company we owned, and he didn't get it. Mwex took them over because one was a neighbor of Petrus, so of course. But so, and at that time, my father said, "Okay, if this deal succeeds, it's you and Max who move to Bordeaux to take over and run it." So probably when this opportunity came to buy a minority share in Avignonesi, it was also thinking of my father, who had passed away 6 years before, and he was passionate about wine, and he would have loved the Desiderio because of the bull. Because my father was a very bullish man in his professional life, and so I said, "Yeah, well, why not do that? It's something which has always interested me." And I was at an age where you want to learn more things. I was 47 at the time, so I think, yeah, I mean, now is the moment to jump into something new. You can't do that when you are the age I am now. Because at that time, and I still have loads of energy, but there you still have even more energy to cope with such a huge adventure.
I see that we have a couple of people who have flagged in from Belgium viewing, also Ireland, and I saw Mexico, and I see Giuseppe, the sommelier, who's following us. Grazie, Giuseppe. If anybody else wants to tell us where you're watching from, what country you represent, just write it in the comments and we can shout out and say hello. So you were just saying that you already were aware that you had a very good nose, and so the wine was something that was quite adjacent to you. And then also, as you just explained, from your family interest, the idea of being part of wine was also interesting. But what you gained with this estate was also a huge opportunity to learn about other things. I know you're passionate about biodynamics, organic farming, sustainability, and some of the issues that you touched on. So this was also an opportunity for you to grow. You said you were looking for new growth areas and new experiences. Can you tell us a little bit about how this changed your mindset, and where where your sources of inspiration were to follow this particular philosophy of farming?
Well, I grew up in a family where we had our own vegetable garden, and everything was organic at the time. Since I was a little girl, my mother took me to the homeopathic doctor rather than, I also went to normal doctors, but homeopathy was my mainstream medicine. I went to an acupuncturist when I was 10, an osteopath when I was 12. So I did all the things which at that time were pretty not normal. I started yoga classes at 6 rather than ballet. So my mother was not a peculiar, that's not a nice word. She was someone with very modern views at the time, especially in the environment in which we grew up. And I did the same with my children, though my daughter went to ballet classes. And when I saw how my workers at Avignonesi had to dress up to spray these chemicals, be it herbicides, be it pesticides, be it chemical fertilizers and so on, I said, well, I don't feel comfortable with that because I wouldn't want to do it. These products stink so hard. They can't be good for you. So let's change that. And so very quickly after taking over 100%, I decided to go organic. And I learned to study. I studied more. I knew about biodynamics, but I wasn't very aware of it. So I started reading a lot. And then I went to this course given by Pierre Masson at the Le Fleuve winery. And that was an eye-opener for me. I said, this relates to so much of what I've learned in homeopathy, that it sounded so logic. For me, organic farming is not doing certain things. And when you work in biodynamic farming, you're just being proactive by giving some additional products, which will, like in homeopathy, boost your immunity, in this case of the plants, increase the health of your soil. And I've just seen it work over the years.
What was the state of farming when you took over in 2009?
They didn't have a single tool to work the land. So it was herbicides, pesticides, and I think they didn't even bother to give chemical fertilizers. So there was very, very low yields, ridiculously low yields. And of course, it's not that I want to have the vineyards, as they say in French, pis grapes. But still, I wanted a healthy yield for vineyards of the age they were at. And I must say, a lot of people I know who plan or would like to move to organic biodynamic farming, they say, oh my God, but I'm going to lose my yields. And as a matter of fact, as far as we're concerned, we've really improved them dramatically. Yeah.
I mean, the problem obviously, with biodynamics is the scalability, right? Because everybody, as you mentioned, we're aware of, the grandmother's plot. Maybe you grew up with biodynamic farming, and then it can be easily achieved on a smaller scale. But when you come to a property like yours, how many hectares are you farming?
At the moment, we're farming about 430 acres, 175 hectares. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget that Rudolf Steiner, in his conferences, was talking to farmers who owned 1,500, 2,000 hectares, so more than 4,000, 8,000 acres.
Right.
He wasn't talking to the small farmer who has a few hectares. And I know I'm being very vilified in Italy among the biodynamic community because we are large and they pretend you cannot be large. It's just like a mom who has 8 kids. She just needs to be damn well organized to make it work. If you have only one, it's piece of cake. And here it's exactly the same. Just be organized. And honestly, the additional cost of being biodynamic compared to organic is not excessive. We're talking a few cents per bottle, so it's absolutely not worth mentioning. But I have seen the difference. Let me tell you, for me, biodynamics is not a means in itself. I do not go into anthroposophic medicine because I don't think it is sufficiently good. I hesitated to put my children in Steiner schools, but they wanted my tax return and I needed to be able to spend 1 day a week at school. So I said no. But at the moment, this is for me the best form of agriculture. Maybe someday someone comes with a better form and then it'll be that. But at the moment, it is the best form of agriculture to improve your soil, improve the quality of your plants, and hence that has a huge impact on our environment, on the planet. We are capturing greenhouse gases when you are organic already. But when you're biodynamic, you capture even more greenhouse gases. And we recently learned from a professor in California, but she's based somewhere else, that when you have clay soils like we have, you capture even more greenhouse gases. So we're going to have that calculated all over because it's so fascinating to see that what we do has such a positive impact on our planet, and in a small way, because we are not huge, on the climate.
And you can calculate it and have real measurement of what the effect is.
It is now possible. This was a thing which I'd been looking for over the last years, and nobody was, I found documents, but they were saying, oh no, nobody has bothered to calculate it. And I thought it had to do with the fact that regenerative farmers do not have the means to go to that kind of effort, whereas the Monsanto Bayers, Syngenta of this world have all the means to prove that we are badasses and that we are not, badass is a good word, that we are not good, that we are not doing, and then they're saying, oh yes, but you use sulfur and copper. Well, it's been proven recently by English University that below 4 kilos of copper per hectare, you do not pollute your soil, and we are below 2 kilos per hectare being biodynamic. So not much of a problem there.
So as low as possible impact.
Yes.
I hope I got everybody, but all right. So I mentioned that we have viewers from Belgium, Ireland, Mexico, quite a few people from Tuscany. Kenya,
I see our
hello.
importer from Ecuador is online.
Yes, I saw Ecuador. Yes. So Napa, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Brazil, Mallorca, Chile, Peru, Chicago, Firenze, Moscow, another person from Russia, Bordeaux, Montalcino, Trentino, and Kent, Austria, and Castel Gandolfo, and Ecuador. So welcome. Montepulciano,
nice mix.
Netherlands. I see more people. Washington, D.C. Hello, everybody. If anybody has any questions for Virginie, please go ahead and ask them in the question segment, and we'll try to get to get to everybody. Hello, everybody. My God, Winnipeg, Germany. Fantastic. The power of Instagram Live. The whole world is, is here. Listen, I'm also curious to know. I've had the pleasure of visiting the estate, and Avignonesi is one of the most beautiful estates in Tuscany. It is. You'll have to explain. You have now a new winery You have the older villa. The grounds are quite large, very beautiful. I mean, even just from the architectural point of view, the positioning on the hill, surrounded by vineyards. It's really, you know, the idyllic estate. And one thing that's always been quite charming is that you're not interested in just wine. I know that you make aceto balsamico, honey. You do many other things on the estate. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the side activities that that you are in charge of?
I must say that I've started. We started keeping bees at Avignonesi. I think it's now 3 years ago with 4 hives. I don't like honey; it's too sweet for me. I really did it because I think it has a good impact on nature. And I'm glad to say that by now we have 18 hives, and it's a natural growth. So it's not that we've been going buying hives from others. It's just that when I don't know the word in English, when the mother bee gets kicked out by a new
queen.
New queen. Some workers leave with her. In Italian, it's sciamare. And Alessio Gorini, who you've met as well, our CEO, agronomo, he knows now how to catch them. He was a total beginner a few years ago, but he's become so great that now we managed to grow our own hives. And that's a lovely product. In fact, Max loves it when I go and look after the bees because he says you come back as if you'd meditated for 3 hours or had a yoga class because I'm so relaxed. It's really a very relaxing activity. Then the aceto balsamico, it's something which Ettore Falvo started and which we are continuing with a passion. As a matter of fact, we had a few people from Modena come by at Avignonesi, and they say that we're doing a really good job. It's a small production, and in fact we only sell it at the winery, but we always sell out because it's such a small production and we can't really cater to the world. And then of course we make our olive oil, except that we have our own press, which not many wineries have. And we are very demanding because, in my opinion, in the Montepulciano area, they are not really good at making olive oil. They're way better in the Chianti area. They're more delicate. And we weren't happy with the Frantoi in the area because they want to have the highest yield, so they continue pressing and they heat I don't know how you call it, the gremola too much, and then you get not really nice olive oil. So we are a bit more generous, so we don't produce as much with what we do.
More precise.
Higher quality olive oil. And then besides that, well, we have a few sheep, and that one is naturally growing as well. We started with 5 and we are now like 14 or so. And the plan is to get some of the hens we have, of course, and it's the plan on the future La Stella version 3rd millennium is to also have some geese in the vineyards to help clean the soil, let some natural fertilizer there. So that's a nice project too.
Now, of course, obviously, wine is the center of attention, and I can see we're getting a lot of questions about wine. So let's just start off at the beginning, and then we'll end with the Occhio di Pernice, because I see about 4 questions about the Vinsanto already. But first of all, there's a question about obviously, so you are in the Montepulciano area, and we just had a question about the difference of the grape Montepulciano and the area, which is important to explain that these are 2 completely different things. But then maybe you can run us through a little bit through your wine program, the grapes that you cultivate and the different wines that you make. And then at the end, of course, we'll get to the Occhio di Pernice di Vinsanto, because we've already been asked what grape is used to make that. and why is it so precious, and how is it made? But first, let's go through some of the table wines, especially starting off with the idea that Vino Nobile di Montepulciano is not made with a grape called Montepulciano, but it's made with a grape called Sangiovese, and sometimes known as Prugnolo Gentile. And Montepulciano is also a grape that's farmed in Abruzzo, and on the Adriatic side of Italy, it's quite common as a red grape, but it has nothing to do with Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, which is the name of the village, the denomination.
Well, in a way, it has to do, because it's the Medici family who was also dominating on the Montepulciano area, because they had strongholds all over. Apparently, from what I gather and I've read, is that the people from Abruzzo, to honor the Medici family, decided to call their local grape Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. I mean, if I could turn the clock back and delete that moment in history, I would be really happy, because it's very damaging to the appellation of Montepulciano, which has not grown like Montalcino has, and has certainly not grown like Montepulciano d'Abruzzo has. And of course, the quantity of Montepulciano d'Abruzzo wines produced at price levels which are never reaching the levels of what we produce is very damaging to the appellation of Montepulciano. And there's a lot of confusion all over. This is why you will notice that on our latest bottles of Nobile, it's very much Nobile written, and you have to be very careful. And as time goes by, you will only see Nobile. And on the back label, you see Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, but because that we are still legally obliged to do. But we managed to convince our consortium that we could really go forward with the word Nobile.
Nobile.
Because then at least, most people read only the front label, or at least when they buy, they look at the front label, and only very few, like you, I'm sure you do, I do too, read the back label to see what's written there. And so having just the word Nobile makes it way stronger. Then Montepulciano, like most of Tuscany, the historic areas of wine producing in Tuscany, it's Sangiovese, like Chianti and like Montalcino. And like in Emilia-Romagna, you also have a lot of Sangiovese. And of course, one thing which people do not realize is that Sangiovese, a bit like Pinot Noir, Pinot Nero, as they say in Italy, is a very plastic grape. Nothing to do with plastics like you have them in your kitchen or whatever. Just that it adapts to the soil and gives another expression in accordance with where it grows, what the climatic conditions are, what the exposure is to southwest, southeast, south, and so on. And that makes it, in my opinion, one of the most interesting grapes. Because you have Merlot, wherever you put Merlot, you can recognize that it's Merlot. With Sangiovese, it's true, but it does get really very peculiar characteristics according to where it's grown, what the wine grower does with it, what the winemaker does with it. And I think that's so fascinating. It's like Burgundy in a way. I mean, it's a bit pretentious for me to say that because I am so much in awe with what these guys do in Burgundy. But there, we have this very small program, because it's really for wine geeks, of our single vineyard wines, where we produce 6 different single vineyard wines in very small quantities. And two of the wines we produce under that single vineyard program, they are like 500 meters from each other. And they're so different because it's a different growing system. So one is an Archetto Toscano, which is the old system where it's pretty high and it's a bit like a double Guillot, you could call it. The other one is a bush-trained vineyard. One soil is more clay, the other one has a little bit more sand. Of course, it's older as well. The exposure is totally different, and it gives such a different wine. But I'm sure you have plenty of questions, so don't want to go, because
Well,
if
no,
you
we
let
have
me
plenty of
talk, I
questions, but I
talk.
have to say, we also have a certain rambunctious Basque person listening, who happens to be your husband, who is complaining that he can't hear very well the sound. I'm not sure if it's my sound or both of ours, but I mean, I can hear it's, but I mean, if I'm not really sure, I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask how to fix it. So please bear with us. But other people say they can hear, so we will just
It's maybe
continue
because he's in
going.
the same he's in the same house as I am.
So maybe
That could be the.
he's in the same and he can't hear. Listen, I'm going to backtrack just for a little bit. We got a lot of questions about biodynamics, a lot of interest, and a lot of heart shapes and whatnot. So there are three questions basically that I'll put to you. Oh, now Max says it is okay. Good. Okay. Ciao, Max. So one question was, do you find that your consumer is willing to pay a premium price for biodynamic wines? The second question is, what kind of regenerative processes do you use the humus in biodynamic? How do you feed the soil in your approach? And the third question was, how does it work if you are farming organically and biodynamically, but your neighbor is not? If your neighbor is not farming that way, how can you protect yourself? So there were those three questions. I can repeat them if necessary.
Okay. So for the first question, we have not really increased our prices dramatically over the years because we are biodynamic. That has never been the plan, because as a matter of fact, and as I said before, the additional cost of being biodynamic is not huge. We hire more staff, but we pay less for chemical products. And I'd rather hire people locally and give them a decent job where they are paid a fair wage, rather than pay large corporations like Bayer, Syngenta, and so on. So that's my philosophy. And I want people to feel happy and comfortable in the job they do and work in safety. Then the second question was about the regenerative side in
Yes.
yeah. Well, to start with, after harvest, we will sow cover crops in the vineyards, and the mix will be slightly adapted according to the need of the vineyard. So in some vineyards, it will be more nitrogen producing crops like peas and stuff, and in others it'll be more a mix where we have a lot of plants like mustard seed, which tend to decompact the soil because they have roots going very deeply. In the past, we would let them on quite long in the vineyard, and we've learned over the time that it's better to just cut them and let them be there. We will work a little bit during the year in our vineyards, but we are not very less and less convinced to work the vineyards a lot. We also have our compost heap, which we use with cow dung. We use our how do you call it in English? A lot of residues from the grapes we throw in there. All the stems and then other stuff goes in there.
From pruning and cutting.
Yeah, and then we add the biodynamic preparations. So it's we also use the Mariatoun barrel compost in our vineyards, which is in a way a very diluted compost, because that we make in barrels, we put under the soil and we add all kinds of things. There's like basalt and eggshells. So I keep all my eggshells to put in there. So if you don't wash them well, it's a very smelly business. So we all the hens, eggs of Avignonesi are recycled in our Mariatoun compost. And then, of course, besides that, we don't use any synthetic products whatsoever in the vineyards. It's all biodynamic products. And then, as I said, very limited amount of copper, since we are below 2 kilos per hectare of copper, even though we are in an area where in spring we can have very wet conditions. We also have in some areas of our vineyards, the Lago Trasimeno, which is the third largest lake of Italy. It's very undeep, but it's a very large lake, which brings fog in the early morning, and that's very detrimental at the time when all the powdered and the other one, mildew, powdered, and what's the other name in English?
Downy.
Downy mildew.
Downy.
Exactly. That's the one. And so that's a tricky moment for us. But what we have also realized that over the years, we know the areas where the mildew will start. So we monitor them very, very closely, because that's the secret to being a good biodynamic farm, is to observe your vineyards on a daily basis and not miss a day. Is that we really have the impression that now, after, because it's in 2011 that we did all the vineyards, so it's 10 years now, our vineyards are now really in a good balance. So the issues, even in difficult years, of the biodynamic, of the disease is contained. Sorry, I'm coming out of a bronchitis, so I'm a bit still in the coughing mode. But so we are very, very happy with all the difficulties and pain we've been going through to have reached where we are now. And then the third question was,
what if your neighbor is not behaving?
We have one huge advantage, is that we are not in Burgundy, we are not in Bordeaux, so our neighbors are usually quite distant from us. There are a few exceptions where we are neighboring vineyards where they pretend they are organic, but they are not certified. And so that doesn't count, because you have to be certified. And then we have some parts of the vineyard which we have to pick separately, and we do that religiously. And we all put all these grapes, we put in one vat and one tank, and we will sell that bulk. The rule in Europe is 30 meters. I think, if I'm correct, that in the US it is further. It's longer than 30 meters. And we respect the American rules, because we are certifying our grapes as well. Not our, it's made, our wines in the US are made with organic grapes. So
I'm not sure what the measurement is here, but yeah, it's true.
I remember that it's further distance than in Europe. But it's only a few areas where we have an issue, and we keep hoping that one day our neighbors will also be certified organic.
Well, that's, there are quite a few wine regions now in Italy that are beginning to group together and trying to make attempts to have an entire area that's certified organic, or an appellation. So hopefully we'll get there soon, so we can see more of this. But I can't forget about the wine. So we have another question of, what is your expectation for 2019 Desiderio? And again, maybe you could just briefly go through the wines in your portfolio. And I have not forgotten about the Occhio di Pernice, for those who keep asking.
So we have, of course, several wines which will work for several budgets and also several occasions. So we start with our Cantaloro line, which is, I never liked that word, but it's our entry-level wines, where we have a red, a white, and a rosato. And honestly, our Cantaloro Rosso, it's outrageously good for its price point. I don't know what it is in the US, but I know that we are selling it like hot buns.
Hotcakes, right?
Hotcakes, yeah. It's selling very well. Our white wine is interesting because there's a lot of Blanc de Noir of Sangiovese in it, because we don't have enough white grapes to
White grapes.
satisfy demand.
So Sangiovese vinified as a white wine.
Yes, which makes
Off the
her
skins.
very interesting. It tastes like Sauvignon Blanc when you have pure Sangiovese in Blanc de Noir. And then our Rosato is made also with Sangiovese. Then we go to our family of Sangiovese. You have the Rosso di Montepulciano and our Nobile, which are both produced with 100% Sangiovese. The Rosso being cheaper, of course, than the Nobile, and being more fruit-driven, only has a shorter oak regime of about 6 months in large oak casks of about 60 hectoliters. And then some further aging in bottle, which is also a wine. I think both our Cantaloro, our Rosso, and our Daddy, which is our amphora wine, are big success stories now, because I think they're reaching the right trend of what people want to drink now. They want fruit-driven wine with not too much wood impact, where we use a bit of carbonic maceration from here and there. And that's what people want to drink nowadays. So that's
so you get that really kind of punchy, lifted, fun wine. Yeah, I enjoy tasting the new wines very much. The Dida, right?
Daddy. Yeah. The Nobile is also 100% Sangiovese. Of course, there by Consorzio appellation rules, we age the wine 18 months in wood, which, since I've taken over, is more and more large oak casks, and hardly any. In the past, it used to be a lot of barrel aging. Now our Nobile doesn't go in barrels anymore. Maybe there may be a very small part of it which goes in 500-liter casks, but we're really avoiding that. So it has become also a fresher wine, more fruit-driven, less oaky. So that's a good thing as well. And then the Daddy is our new baby on the block, which is made in terracotta jars. And it's a very successful wine. In fact, we sell out very quickly. It's also a more disruptive label compared to what Avignonesi has always done. It's a very traditional, old school labels. This one, it's like a big fat mama embracing the earth.
And
it's very colorful. It's a Pachamama is the name I was looking for, and I wanted a very easy word. And Daddy is a Chinese word, which in Japanese would be Daiichi, and it means big piece of land and so on. And it's easy in every language. As far as I know, up to now, it's not an insult in any language. So, yeah, because that's a problem as well.
But tell us the story also about the terracotta amphora as well, because you have a program where you're making them on site using different artisans and using your own clay from the property.
Yeah, so we have by now 12 jars, which are quite large. 2 made in Impruneta, which is a traditional area of Tuscany for making jars. And the other ones are made in Torrita di Siena, which is really very close to Montepulciano. It's our neighbor town. And, we always knew that in our vineyards of Progetto, we have this blue clay. The professors from Bordeaux said, this is the clay like from Petrus. It's the blue clay of Petrus. Well, if I can't make good wine there. Yeah. And we asked our potter, we have diggers, so one day we said, well, why don't you come and look at this clay? Do you think you can make some pots? It was Max's idea, I must recognize that. And he said, yeah, why not? Let's make some pots with some jars with your clay. And when it's wet and in the soil, it's really a beautiful blue. I don't know if Max showed you the pictures. It's darker than your eyes. And when they are cooked, they have the same color of a normal terracotta jar. And he said, well, I can't make larger jars than 200 liters. So we produced a wine called Nabit Wall, which is not another brick in the wall. And this is really very, very exclusive wine, which has only been sold up to now in two restaurants in New York. And it's fun because the wine, which is vinified in the jars, comes from the vineyard, which is like 10 feet from where the clay came from. Yeah, and that one has those jars have been made by our potter in Torrita di Siena by a guy from Punjab. He's Punjabi, so it's
Punjabi
the world.
Potter in Siena for making jars.
Yeah, I mean he's a laborer who's working for the Tuscan guy.
Yeah,
and so that's it's
no,
quite a nice
it's a
story.
great story. I saw the photo and I thought this was fantastic because I mean, talk about right from farm to table. This is everything. The entire ecosystem of the wine comes from one specific.
This is absolute
spot.
farm to table. Right. And then, of course, we have our single vineyards, which I mentioned to you before. We have our Ingrandianate, which is, in the past, it used to be a Reserva. We stopped doing that. It's a Nobile. And in fact, now it's no longer a Nobile. It's just a DOC.
That was always one of the most famous wines from the estate portfolio, the Grandianate, right? Most very recognized, one of the most important wines to come.
Yeah, we stopped making it a DOCG because I don't like an appellation dictating me how much time I need to put my wine in wood.
Right.
I find especially a grape like Sangiovese is talking to you and is telling you, please get me out of this damn cask. Right. I want to be out of this wood. And there I have the freedom now. So the wine traditionally does about 18 months, which is too short for a DOCG Reserva appellation in Montepulciano. But it does the wine good. And then we come to our Super Tuscans. I'll start with the Griffi, which is a wine which traditionally at Avignonesi was made with Cabernet Sauvignon from Cortona and Sangiovese from Montepulciano. Now we also have a little bit of Cabernet in a vineyard I purchased from Val di Piata some years ago. So that Cabernet may end in that wine. It's a wine which we will not necessarily produce every year, just like the Grandianate. It's only in great vintages. Right. So 2014, to give an example, was not produced. And last but not least, our Desiderio and the 50-50. Desiderio is Super Tuscan, made originally only with Merlot. Then they started adding Cabernet to it. I did so in the beginning too, and now it's again 100% Merlot. And then the 2019 vintage, we did a particular collaboration with Fabio Motta from Bolgheri, who has been involved in the process of the whole production. So he came very many times to the vineyards to look at them, to understand and see and learn. And because, of course, he didn't know our estate as well as we do. And then during the vinification process, he had his impact as well. So that'll be a special little baby.
So that collaboration with Fabio is 2019.
Yes, 2020. I wanted to do it with the owner of Le Pin in Bordeaux. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we couldn't do that. But might come up again.
Does that mean that Desiderio will combine fruit from Bolgheri and?
No.
It's just
all our own. So he gives his input.
Collaboration, right?
Yes, and of course we are large, so we have Merlot growing all over the place. So it was really, at the end of a harvest we have like 30 different masses of Merlot, and pick and choose. What would you put in the blend? And that's
Fabio Motta, for maybe those who don't know, he's a young producer in Bolgheri and really one of the rising stars. Excellent wines right off the bat. He has a small, I can't remember how many hectares he farms.
It's growing, but it's not that many.
But it's growing. In fact, he just bought more land and he's doing quite well. He's really kind of, a name to watch, especially in the Bulgari appellation for sure.
I see we're going in Peru and Chile.
Yes,
Fantastic.
we have
Yeah.
huge.
And Brazil.
And of course, the 50-50 was also another historic wine made together with another
a joint
estate
venture with Campanelle in Gaiole in Chianti.
In Gaiole in Chianti.
Which started in the late 80s, where they produced a Sangiovese, and we produced the Merlot, and we blend that together. It was a marketing gimmick, but which works. There's a lot of absolute aficionados of that wine.
The wine has endured, in fact, many years.
And unfortunately, the partnership, of course, has changed, because originally it was someone else and Ettore Falvo. Then it was me with Jim Sherwood. Jim Sherwood passed away last year, so now we are collaborating with his sons, and I think we're going on a nice way. We are planning on making a 50-50 Rosato this year, 2021. So it was very, very minimal quantities, just to celebrate the new jump in the venture with the younger, even though we're not that young, but the younger generations of Campanelle and Avignonesi.
Yeah, Campanelle already makes an interesting rosé as well. So it's they have a bit of background. Yeah. So of course we cannot forget. You have to tell us what makes the Occhio di Pernice and the Vinsanto. You make two different Vinsantos, one with white grapes and one with red grapes. The ones with the red grapes is called Occhio di Pernice. And can you describe what makes it so precious?
Well, the Vinsanto producing was a long-standing story in the Avignonesi family. As a matter of fact, we purchased some vineyards from Antonio Avignonesi, who's one of the sons of Geo. He's a pharmacist in Montepulciano, and once he showed me, he still has bottles from the late 1940s. When Ettore Falvo got married to Adriana, his father-in-law, Geo, gave him in dowry, the mother of the Avignonesi Vinsanto. And that was a thing which pleased Ettore a lot and got him all excited about producing Vinsanto. And he also started making, I don't think the family Avignonesi was making Occhio di Pernice. That was really something which Ettore Falvo started doing. So for everyone who's listening and is not familiar, Vinsanto is made with Malvasia and Trebbiano grapes, which are white grapes from Tuscany. And the Occhio di Pernice is made with Sangiovese grapes. And there are not many producers. One day I started to try and list them, and I didn't come to 20.
In fact, it's a very precious, rare wine.
You may know more.
It pours from the glass with this kind of almost copper, deep, dark copperish color. And it has, just incredibly, honey, maple syrup, kind of a
dried fruits.
Caramel. Yeah, it's quite an incredible wine. I mean, it's incredible.
I think it's a combination of this exceptional, very old mother from the Avignonesi family, which has been in the family for several centuries. Nobody knows how many. But then also it's the very long aging process. Sorry. Normally, most Vinsantos, the horrible Vinsantos you find in the supermarkets, not even a year. And they add caramel like they do in much of the Aceto Balsamico, God forbid. We don't. But the Occhio di Pernice and the Vinsanto from Avignonesi, they stay more than 10 years in our Apacitoio. And so we lose a huge amount. So there's an enormous amount of concentration. In fact, what we put in the casks, it's all less than half, which comes out
Right. So over the
after this. It's like with the balsamico there as well.
right,
We
10
start with
years
casks
of
which are, and then it gets smaller and smaller. And it's
concentration.
this concentration which makes it something absolutely exquisite. Of course, people are often a bit scared by the price. I have two solutions for that. One, first, I made it 100 ml bottles. So when you come to Avignonesi and you want to buy one, you can put it in your little plastic transparent pouch to pass
Right.
in your hand
Customer
luggage.
airport, right?
And then secondly is that it's such a rich Vinsanto that, as a matter of fact, at our restaurant winery, at the winery, we serve with half a bottle because we only make half bottles, or these 100 ml bottles. We serve about 18 to 20 glasses with it. You really don't need that much.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it's a wine which has gone through all its oxidation processes, so it keeps in the fridge
It keeps forever, yeah.
for at least a
It's
year.
indestructible. Yeah.
Yeah. So it may sound expensive, but the fact is that if you have a dinner party, you can serve so many people with it and even have some left over. Whereas with a normal bottle of red wine, well, you need a lot of bottle of red wine to please your friends.
Right, and this is just a tiny drop of, Occhio di
Yeah,
Pernice.
yeah, and we like to serve it in really large brandy glasses. That's the best
To
trick.
give it a lot of, it's incredibly expressive. So we're winding up. I do have a final question for you. And thank you, everybody, for all the wonderful compliments and for everybody who's enjoyed following this Instagram Live. I really am pleased to see that everybody seems to be getting a lot out of it. I'm quite curious about a more recent news that I read that I wanted you to explain briefly about how you have taken the extraordinary step of changing your corporate status, I suppose, and to be more nonprofit, basically. And I wanted to know what.
It's not a non-profit.
No, okay. So
it's
explain.
a società benefit.
Yes.
It's you have a name for it in the US as well, because as a matter of fact, our aim was to become a B Corporation, mm-hmm. which is something which was created amongst others by Patagonia. And there are, if you look on the website of B Corp, there's a lot of huge corporations in the US and also small breweries and people producing other natural products. And, I was looking for many years for some kind of international certification, because I believe in certification to be credible. Which would certify our sustainability, also our ethics in work, how we treat our laborers. Because of course you can go for a fair trade, but usually that's more for countries in Africa or where they still have they're still in development stages. I don't think you can be fair trade in Italy because we are supposedly a developed society, even though it's not fair trade for all wine producers or farmers in Italy, unfortunately. And so B Corp seemed to integrate all of it. And when you want to become a B Corp and you're an Italian corporation, you have to be a società benefit, a benefit company, which means that you have to write a report every year where you say how you improved your weak points, how you've treated your staff, what you've done for the environment, what you've done with your energy consumption, how sustainable is your energy consumption. So from what I've heard for companies who are under that program, B Corp, is that it's just a permanent push for you to do better. And in fact, the whole process of going through their long questionnaire and replying to that has been for all of us an eye-opener and saying, oh yes, there are plenty of things where we can still do better. Mm-hmm. And so it's an enormous stimulation, an enormous motivation for the team as well. And it's the first time that we send a questionnaire to all our staff, asking them, about their jobs. And there was a bunch of questions to reply, and it was interesting to get the response. And there are things where we have to improve, and we'll do that. We'll send the same questionnaire to our suppliers, to our agents, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I think that in the third millennium, we owe it to our planet, to the people who live on our planet, to do that. Because we can't go on like we are doing at the moment, unfortunately. We realize it. I mean, you live in California now for quite a while because of COVID. You've seen all the fires.
Oh, I've been here for years stuck because of all this.
Yeah.
And it's been, it's horrifying. And then also, I've been on a vineyard. So it's been magical to, to realize that when you live in a city, you don't watch the spring in the same way, and you don't watch the fall come in the same way. You don't watch the leaves change colors. And being here in the country has been, a real eye-opening. I mean, it's an inspiration what you're doing, and the fact that you've even changed, corporate structure or Veste, to be able to continue your work. With the sustainability and with farming, and then you're right, the wellness of all the employees and the people that you work with. So I mean, it's a very innovative and not easy choice, and congratulations for
Thank you very much
for being a role model
not,
for everybody that's interested in these topics.
Yeah. But it's not a difficult choice. It is a pure continuity of what we were doing and putting it in a more organized fashion. And I'm glad to be a role model. And that's why as well with the biodynamics, I would so much love, and I'm doing it slowly, I'm convincing large estates to move into biodynamics. And that's absolutely wonderful. And as I said, biodynamics is not my end purpose. If some bright guy somewhere or woman in Japan or China or Brazil finds a form of regenerative agriculture, which is even better in results than biodynamics, I'll jump for it. I'll start like I did with biodynamics on a few parcels of the estate. But we have to think forward about what we do with this planet. And we are producing a product which is a product drunk for pleasure. It's not it used to be for sustenance because water was unhealthy. But now we have all adequate, healthy water to drink. I'm saying that it's not even true, unfortunately. But I think we owe it. We are in a way making a luxury product, a fun product, which is not essential. We can live without wine. I wouldn't like to, but we can. I think we wine producers have to go into regenerative, sustainable viticulture. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to watch myself in the mirror if I didn't do that.
Well, on that note, listen, thank you so much for joining us for this hour. Thank you to everybody who joined us from afar. And as Giuseppe just writes, biodynamics is the future. So
thank you
Virginie,
very much,
Monica.
It was a great pleasure.
Yes, and I look forward to seeing you when back in Italy.
Yeah, otherwise I'll have to come and see you in California,
exactly.
I guess. Okay.
All right.
Grazie
Goodbye,
mille.
everybody.
Arrivederci.
Thank you very much.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.
Bye.